Thanks for clicking! The real estate industry does a worse job at protecting consumers than that of the car sales industry. This according to a recent poll on this channel. And I ran that poll in preparation for this video as it comes amid news that Ontario's real estate regulator completely fell down on a $10.5 million fraud with growing calls, both real and cosmetic, for major changes to the regulator. And although from time to time we make a few jokes comparing realtors to car salesmen on this channel, no offense to car salesmen, I wanted to undertake a data-driven study to see which regulator, RECO for real estate or OMVIC for car sales, does a better job at protecting consumers.
Bye-bye, Ed.
So what I want to do today is briefly go over the regulators for both the car sales and the real estate industries, take a data-driven approach to measure which regulator is doing a better job at protecting consumers, and then go over some implications. We do have a big week coming up with Canada's national real estate data set to be released next Monday and the Bank of Canada set to make its policy rate announcement next Wednesday, and we'll obviously have an update out on both on this channel. Make sure you click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, let's get into these regulators. On to the regulators. First up, OMVIC, which regulates the automotive industry in Ontario and exists to protect car buyers and enhance registration professionalism. By government order, no more than 34% of OMVIC's board can be from the industry, and then they have another 1/3 from the general public and another 1/3 appointed by the government. This is very similar to RECO, whose stated mission is to protect consumers by ensuring that real estate agents understand and follow the law. Its board can also only have 34% of its members being from the real estate industry. Yet the governance at the top is very different, with the chair of OMVIC appointed by the minister and RECO's chair being elected. And it shows. OMVIC's chair, Patricia Perkins, served 18 years as a city councillor, vice chair of Health and Social Services Committee, was a member of Parliament for Whitby, Oshawa, experience as a finance director, Children's Aid Society, etc., etc. Compare that with the chair of RECO, Katie Steinfeld, who served as a realtor for 14 years and co-owns a real estate brokerage. So while we might have a similar composition of both boards from each regulator, the governance from the top is very different, with the one at the top of the organization that chose not to charge the perpetrators of a $10.5 million fraud being a realtor. But let's move on to consumer protection. How active are both regulators at proactively protecting consumers? For this, let's get into the data. On the one hand, OMVIC regulates 30,000 total car salespeople, whereas RECO regulates 110,000 real estate agents. So, given that OMVIC regulates far fewer registrants than does RECO, we should also expect to see far fewer inspections as well. But we don't. According to OMVIC, in 2023, they conducted 2,471 inspections, where the regulator looked at the books, removed records to take photocopies, and made inquiries into the complaints about the dealer's conduct. In contrast, RECO did 900. So RECO had 4x the number of members under its supervision and conducted 1/3 of the total inspections. Further, it's also worth noting that OMVIC also does secret shoppers, conducting 209 of them in 2023, whereas RECO only uses a complaints-driven model, meaning they only do something if there's a complaint, and even then. Now, although the regulator doesn't do secret shopping, the CBC certainly does.
When agents represent both sides, they must act with fairness. They can't reveal competing bids. But that's exactly what these agents promised to do within minutes of meeting with us.
That was one from 8 years ago. Here's the one from 3 years ago.
It's called steering, when real estate agents take their buyers to high commission homes and avoid low commission ones like Joanne's.
So, OMVIC secret shops, the CBC secret shops, RECO does not.
I'm not doing too much. I am not doing too much.
And it's not like OMVIC is spending a whole lot more money than is RECO. In 2023, OMVIC spent $24.1 million and RECO spent $27. So OMVIC, with a relatively smaller budget than its counterpart in the real estate industry, does a lot more in proactively policing its members. But maybe OMVIC needs to do more because there's just so much more to do. Maybe car salespeople, by their nature, are just worse people than are realtors. So OMVIC has to do more to step in. Well, in 2023, OMVIC received 4,000 complaints, and Ontario had 681,000 new cars sold that year. So about 0.5% of vehicle transactions led to a complaint. It's actually going to be much less than that, as I'm not including used car sales in the metric, as the data on that is sparing, but I am going to err on the side of being more pro real estate, as from experience and from the comments, real estate agents are going to whine a lot more, throwing a tantrum over numbers.
It's not fair to make me do math.
But RECO complaints are a little bit different. In 2022, RECO told the Ontario Legislature that it receives about 4,000 complaints per year, half of which gets triaged out as frivolous or vexatious, or like annoying, frustrating, etc.
They're so annoying.
As to the number of transactions, as to the number of homes sold, that's also a little bit difficult, as there isn't really any Ontario-wide data available. As such, we'll get the data from the CREA, which noted 506,000 homes sold in 2022, and we'll use half of that for Ontario, even though Ontario only represents 40% of the population. Again, we're going to be very, very generous on the realtors. With that generosity in mind, that would put the total number of homes sold in Ontario at 253,000 with 4,000 complaints. That means 1.5% of all transactions led to a complaint, compared to 0.5% of those in the automotive industry. So even though OMVIC is much more active in getting complaints than is RECO, it receives much less per transaction than does the real estate industry. Meaning, according to the consumers themselves, the automotive industry, car salesmen, do a better job at protecting their interests, at treating them fairly, than do those in real estate.
That's rough, kid. That's rough.
But what happens after those complaints are filed? OMVIC aims to have complaints resolved within 45 days, which it tracks, reaching 45 days in 2022. Further, OMVIC can require compensation for those complainants should it deem it necessary. In 2023, were dealers to pay out $2.2 million, and itself paying out $842,000 from its own restitution fund. In contrast, RECO takes, admittedly, much longer to handle complaints, aiming for 110 days, reporting 137 days in 2021, with Reddit saying the process is more like 4 to 6 months. And the CBC found something similar. And when those complaints are handled, RECO cannot return monies, cancel contracts, or impose restitution, and advises you to see a lawyer if you need to. Imagine all of that going through the headache of dealing with a realtor, then 4 to 6 months on the regulator, and then after all of that, you get to see a lawyer.
I need a shower.
So before moving on to disciplinary action, let's briefly summarize. OMVIC regulates 25% of the people that RECO does, but conducts 3 times as many investigations, despite receiving 1/3 of the complaints per transaction. OMVIC takes much less time to handle complaints than does RECO, and if you have a problem in your car sales transaction, if you have a problem buying a car, you're much more likely to be compensated than you are if you have a problem buying the biggest purchase of your life. All of that data on its own is enough to tell us what we need to know, what consumers think. They complain much more about relations with realtors than they do about their interactions with car salesmen. But how much do these complaints actually lead to discipline? That's kind of a mixed bag. If we look at OMVIC in 2023, when it had those 4,000 complaints, it only undertook 24 disciplinary actions. RECO, on the other hand, which says it has about 4,000 complaints per year, had 117 disciplinary actions in 2023, 78 in 2024. So it does look, at least from this, as though RECO is harder on its people. With that said, I'm not overly sure on this data. Look at Kim Robinson, click on it, view document, you get all of the info. That's how it should work. On the other hand, if you look at Jeet, I probably butchered that, no option for view document, and then something blank comes up for printing. Same for Gan Shuang, same for etc., etc. I can't go through the entire list, I'm just one man.
So I'm too busy right now.
As far as I can tell, this does not happen on the OMVIC website. Very, very cut and dry, all documents available. So who knows, as of 2025, RECO has far less disciplinary actions to date than does OMVIC, but home sales are way down, so it's kind of really a mixed bag. Regardless though, judging from the amount of oversight and investigations, inspections, etc., 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 OMVIC works much harder at regulating its people, and given the amount of complaints per transaction, it appears as though it's much more successful. As such, as calls grow for reform of the real estate regulator, maybe the real estate industry could look to the automotive industry, could look to car salesmen who set a better example. And that's not just a funny joke, as we saw today, that's backed up with data. Whether or not any real actual reforms to RECO will come into the fore after that $10.5 million fraud remains to be seen, but we will obviously continue to track how this plays out on this channel. Make sure you click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, thanks so much for watching.